Dr. Emanuel, great to have you on. Really appreciate it. Huge fan of the book, which is Eat Your Ice Cream, 6 Simple Rules for a Long and Healthy Life. And before we dive into it, the word longevity, man, if I had a dime for every time I heard it on the news or social media, I would be a very wealthy man. What do you make of this renewed interest, this movement in living longer?
Yes, I think first of all, it's become a sort of social obsession. And it happens, this isn't the first time. In the late 1800s to about World War One, so 1880 roughly to 1914, we also had a national, and it was an international, Germany, France, England, all obsessed with longevity, wellness. So what is parallel in these two moments? One, there is a lot of industrialization. Then it was the second industrial revolution. Now it's AI and the fourth industrial revolution. We had lots of immigration around the world. Lots of people coming into the United States, Statue of Liberty celebrating that. But there was lots of immigration in other places. There's also a lot of small wars going on. Russia, Japan, U.S. Against Spain, the Spanish-American War, and Franco-Prussian War. So lots of that. There was also the beginning of processed foods. So lots of people were worried about their foods. We had The Jungle written, Upton Sinclair's famous novel about food processing. So there's lots and lots of parallels. And I think what is key is at those moments, people feel like the world is topsy-turvy. So many changes, they're not controlling them. They feel like the world's controlling their lives. And so this is one area: health, wellness, eating the right thing, not taking vaccines, that people feel like they can assert their autonomy and self-determination. And that is what's common, I think, about this moment, right? I can't control the world, but I can control how much I exercise, what I eat, whether I take vaccines or not. And I think that's where it's coming from, frankly.
I guess I've generally had a solid focus on wellness, but I've never thought, oh, I want to live to be 100 or 110. I'd rather live till 85 and be very, very happy than live till 110 and skip my ice cream. Are we emphasizing the wrong priorities?
I think we are emphasizing the wrong priorities, because I think this idea of length of life versus quality of life, and I've asked some of those longevity gurus, oh, why do you want to live to 150? And I don't get a coherent answer back, actually. I've been at dinners where they're sitting right next to me, and I said, so what are you going to do to 150? Silence. And that does tell me that they're not really thinking about what the purpose of life is. They're just counting, can I beat the next guy and live longer? And, for most of us, it's really about what's our purpose and how are we going to realize it going forward. And, when we talk about that, the guy who comes to my mind, after all, at the University of Pennsylvania, is Ben Franklin. He's a guy who really had a purpose, and he lived fully functional. Mind was as sharp as a 25-year-old. Everyone reports that, all the way to his 84th birthday, and that is in the 1790. Okay, so it was a long time when the average life expectancy was about 40 years old. And the key thing was he was always curious. He was always interested in what's going on around the world. He was always interested in improving himself, in growing, not being stagnant, finding his prejudices, finding things he didn't do right, and fixing them. And the last and most important thing is he wanted to be useful. For him, useful meant, how can I improve the world? What am I doing that's going to make the world better? Now, we know him for his, inventions. He certainly improved the world from his inventions. I'm a beneficiary with my, my progressive lenses. He certainly improved the world by lightning rods. He improved the world by many, many other things. He invented, you as a man will appreciate this, urinary catheters. Okay, his brother had a bladder stone and so he had a flexible urinary catheter. He invented that. Anyway, but he never patented one of his inventions. Why didn't he patent his inventions? Because he wanted to give them to the world for other people to improve them. He just wanted to make the world better. It wasn't about making money for him. So that, when people talk about why do you want to live, I always think about Ben Franklin. Make the world better.
Yeah, it's funny because the last words in your book are start thinking like Franklin and figure out what you can do to be useful. Health, wellness, and longevity will follow. I don't think anyone had in their head Ben Franklin when they thought about wellness prior to your book, one of many accomplishments. So kudos on that. One thing I will say I have picked up in this longevity movement, and I'm obsessed, Doc, and I hope you don't bust my bubble. The sauna has changed my life. Are
Ah,
these longevity benefits for real, or is it just in my head?
saunas?
Yes.
For real. The,
Okay.
the Finns got the data. They've done a study of, 0 to 1 saunas a week versus 4 saunas a week. 4 saunas live longer. You've got it, man. Just keep doing it.
Oh, it's fantastic. All right.
Yes.
A couple of things in the news, and the hottest supplement, I guess, around the country, maybe in large part because of Joe Rogan, peptides. What do you know? And I think you already have your answer. I don't need to ask the question. Is this something I, as a 49-year-old man, should be taking?
No. Yes, there are lots of peptides out there, some of which are therapeutic. GLP-1, for example, is a peptide. Insulin's a peptide. But just taking a gamish of peptides, not knowing who's preparing them, not knowing which peptide, not knowing how it's, have controlled trials been done. There are a few where we've had controlled trials, but I would say, by and large, don't do it. Not smart, lots of money, and, my general philosophy, and this I think will put people in good stead, is, if there's a breakthrough like GLP-1s, like Ozempic or Wegovy, you will hear about it. Responsible people, authoritative people will be talking about it. It'll be there. If you get Joe Rogan without a MD, last I looked, without even going to med school, last I looked, is the chief spokesman. Probably not.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not saying that some of the peptides might not actually hit a home run, but you have no idea how they're prepared. You have no idea which ones are in them, and just getting a gamish, witch's brew of peptides is not the way to actually live a long time.
The dude
Stick to
does look good.
the
He
whole
has
point of
no
the six
energy.
rule. The whole point of the six rules is stick to what we know and what we've known for thousands of years.
We are going to get to the six rules, but you mentioned GLPs, but your book also says by 2050, over 80% of Americans will be overweight or obese. 6% of Americans are currently on GLPs. And I can't imagine once the prices fall and once we have it in a pill format, I would guess that number doubles, if not triples or more. So will that counteract Americans becoming more obese and overweight?
Two things. The answer is GLP-1s are great. And for people who have difficulty with food and all sorts of issues, I think they're fantastic. I think they should be used. That is not the way to solve our overweight and obesity problem, which is huge. 70% of Americans are overweight or obese. 70% of American adults. Okay? We have to solve that by changing food, changing exercise, changing sleep. That's the only way we're going to make a durable change. Even if the price dropped hugely, you're not going to get people on it all the time. And more importantly, they would have to stay on it for the lifetime. That is hard to do. We know we've got diabetes, we've got hypertension, we've got lots of other diseases where people have to be on the drugs for a lifetime. Really, really hard to do. So I think that's not our solution to the problem. It is a way of helping people who are having difficulty with obesity now.
Yeah, it really hasn't turned out that way. I mean, I can't. In my town, it's probably 25%, and most of them were not obese. They are just using it to lose a couple of pounds. All right.
Yes, well, that I think is also something that I'm against. We have a shortage, and you're using it for cosmetic reasons. No, I can't endorse that.
So simple rules for a long and healthy life. Number one is don't be a schmuck, and please read the book to find out what that has to do with Zeke's first car. What a terrific story, by the way. I truly will not forget that one anytime soon. But one of the first things in that Don't Be a Schmuck chapter is drinking alcohol. And we've really received some confusing messages in recent years from the Surgeon General prior to what we just found out in the new dietary guidelines. Bottom line it for us. We know alcohol is not healthy. Is moderate drinking okay?
So, the big issue, okay, is if you just look at the physical, the narrow physical outcomes, liver toxicity, cirrhosis, and liver damage, increasing your risk of cancers, at least 7 cancers, disrupting your sleep, alcohol's not a winner. Now, there are some studies that suggest 3 to 4 drinks a week, so half a drink a day, is okay. There are some groups, you're getting there, middle-aged men with some heart disease or risk for heart disease, alcohol is good, but physically good. That's the limit. On the other hand, there are 2 points that I think are really important to emphasize. 65% of Americans drink, all right? You're not going to 0. So you've got to try to help them drink responsibly, and that's important. Furthermore, for many people, alcohol is a way of opening up, of lubricating social interactions. And for that, it is a good thing. So you've got to balance, everything is pluses and minuses. There are trade-offs. And I think if you're trading off, okay, I'm going to have a drink, and I'm going to have a good communal meal with, 4 couples of dear friends, that is worthwhile. That's the kind of thing you should be doing. So binge drinking, drinking a lot at one sitting, drinking alone, those are not good ideas. But using alcohol to have a nice communal meal with other people and engage in, good social conversation, that's very valuable. And we know that social interaction will do a lot to prolong your life. That's why I think it's a more nuanced answer than, yes or no. And I think also the Surgeon General's report, it made me upset because I think the idea of telling people no alcohol, they're going to just tune you out. And you're not going to get anything that way. And so I think that's just a mistake.
Yeah, I can say for a friend, I know a lot of people that tuned that one out. Let's make you bartender, Zeke. I mean, is there gin, whiskey, tequila, or beer, wine? Is there one particular thing that is less damaging or more? No, all the same.
Yeah, it's basically the alcohol.
Okay. And smoking has largely flatlined. I mean, it is down 60-70% since the late 60s. Vaping has somewhat replaced it. Is it more damaging than people know, vaping and e-cigarettes?
The answer is yes. I mean, I think people say, well, it's safer than smoking. And the answer to that is yes, absolutely, vaping is safer than smoking. But it's not like it's risk-free. For one thing, you are inhaling things into your lungs, and we don't have 20, 30 years of data on vaping, which just hasn't been around that long. So the long-term consequences, we don't know. Remember, it's not the people. You smoke once and you develop lung cancer. You smoke once, you develop emphysema. No, it's decades of that stuff, and we haven't had decades of vaping, so we don't know. Some of the preparations are also problematic, and that I think is a very big issue for us. And the preparations are. The third thing is, it does appear that getting young kids to vape is a pathway for some of them to smoking. And that's not the right direction. The right direction is cigarettes to vaping to not smoking at all and not vaping.
You don't see many public places where you're allowed to smoke, which has gone a long way towards helping that problem. All right, so rule.
Thank you, Mayor Bloomberg.
Yes, that is.
He's the guy who started it. And it's not, actually one of the most interesting things I say, people, when did that start? Oh, like 1980. No, it was in the early 2000 and noughts. And Bloomberg was the guy who pioneered. Everyone said, restaurants will collapse, bars will collapse. No, they just make it cleaner to be in and nicer to be around. So.
clothes smell better. And I know Dr.
Yeah.
Scott Gottlieb had a lot to do with curbing vaping as well. Kudos to him. And number
Yes.
two on those rules, talk to people. What did we learn? Your book talks about the Harvard study of adult development. What did that find? What did we learn?
Yes, it's a study that began in the late 1930s with Harvard sophomores and enrolled them. So it was only men, and it was looking for what is the secret to a long, healthy, and happy life. That was the question. And then they combined that study with another study that began about the same time in inner city Boston, in Roxbury, where they enrolled kids from less privileged backgrounds who weren't involved with the criminal justice system, and they then merged them, and then they enrolled spouses and children. And they followed them now for over 80 years. And the number one determinant for a long, healthy, that is, you were physically fit, and happy life turned out to be social relationships. Being married, having close friends, all really, really important. And more important than the amount people exercise, what they ate, and all the other things that people purport to think are important for a long, healthy, happy life. And that is a pioneering study. In point of fact, that's a version of that study has been repeated by many people, not taking college sophomores, but in China, they have 100,000 people who they interview regularly, including lots of centenarians, people over 100, and they assess their social life, and there too, social interaction. Are they being visited by family members? Are they playing mahjong with other people? Doing those kind of activities, really important. Similarly, we have a study from Sweden where they follow people for 6 or 8 years, and those people who have good social relationships, they have 22% less likely to die in the next 6 years. Those are the kind of data we have that show how important social relationships are. And you know what's crazy? I was just talking to someone who asked me the question, so, why aren't doctors talking about this? Because we're never told. When we think of wellness, right, our society, it's eating, exercise, and sleep. Not, do you have friends? Are you talking to people? That is very, very, and it's not just important psychologically, it's important because it changes like your stress hormones. It changes your brain hormones. So dopamine goes up with social interaction.
Well,
Really important.
As someone who's an anxiety sufferer and was prior to this interview, just talking to you now, I can feel those levels come down dramatically, instantly. So it is an important reminder. So thanks for that, by the way. And then social media, Doc. It was intended to bring us together. At least that's what the story on Facebook was when it started. It has instead done what?
It's anti-social media. And, I think the problem is that you can connect to people online once you know them, but you can't connect deeply to someone, or you can't begin a connection deeply to someone online. We are social animals. Our brains are structured for tens of thousands of years to interact personally. And we know that, when you and I interact over a screen, a part of my brain lights up. When we interact actually in person, face to face, right? Way more of my brain lights up. I'm looking at your body in a different way. I'm looking at the whole picture. And that is very, very important. And we need a certain quantity of time together to have quality relationships. You can't just jump in and have a close personal relationship. You have to actually develop it over time. You have to develop trust. You have to feel like this is a person who will understand you. And that takes time, and it takes personal, face-to-face, in-person interaction, not social media.
You have a rule at Penn, where you are now, no phones in the classroom. Why,
Yeah.
and what's been the impact of that rule?
So I have, for a long time, I had a rule of turn your phone off. And the problem is that kids put the phone on the table, it's in their pocket. And it occurred to me, you look at the data, and actually, if you have a phone right there that you can see, you're more distracted by the phone, wondering, is it going off? What's happening? So I tell them they have to turn their phone off, put them in their backpack or their coat pocket, away, not visible. Really super important. And it made a huge difference to my classes. Huge difference. Kids are now focusing on what we're doing in class, and the result is Ezekiel Emanual is a better teacher. No, I'm not a better teacher. I've been doing the same thing. It's that they're more engaged, and that's the important part. And I'll tell you, students, initially they're a little hesitant, but then they actually really like it. And the way I know this is another professor of mine who teaches at USC in Southern California. She said, I read your article, and that's now part of the book. And she said, I gave it to a vote to my students. Do they want to ban the phone or not ban the phone in the classroom? And her students wanted to ban the phone because they wanted to actually focus better. So I think students actually will come to like it.
I agree with you. I mean, I am very pro school cell phone bans at every high school in the country. Would you like to see that?
Oh, I've been working in Pennsylvania to try to get a state law passed to ban bell-to-bell phones. The governor just last week endorsed it. Been working on that, and I think it would be a great achievement. We know that there are 3 advantages from banning the phones in middle school and high school. 1, student achievement actually goes up, so test scores do better. 2, bullying and fights in schools goes down. And 3, the consequent is social interaction, real person-to-person interaction goes up. What's not to like? It's a home run. So
I'd like to ban myself. I'm north of 10 hours a day on this damn device. One last thing in this chapter that I find truly astounding, and this is number 2, talk to people. You talk to your brothers Rahm, who everyone knows, the former Chicago mayor and congressman and chief of staff and ambassador, and Ari Emanuel, arguably the most powerful man in Hollywood. You talk to them 4 or 5 times a week? Is that real? How do you pull that off with 3 of the busiest brothers in the country?
Because a lot of the calls are, 90 seconds, 60 seconds, because we know each other and we know each other well. We, over the weekend, I was like talking to my brother about, we're both going to be in Italy for the Winter Olympics. So, trying to, 10 seconds, you want to have dinner together on this day or that day? That's the kind of thing you can do when you know people really, really well, because you already communicate. Or, he's having a birthday, so talking to him about seeing him on his birthday. And it's really easy when it's really short, and we can also have long conversations. When we're together, conversations will go on for hours. We'll have a meal that'll be, a couple of hours long, easy. And that is, Ram went to see my mom, and he sent me a picture of him with mom, and we, exchanged texts about, how mom is doing, what she's complaining about today, how she doesn't like her children, all that stuff. So.
I think I talk to my brother probably 4 or 5 times a year. So
yeah, we're constantly, yeah. And actually, I will tell you, one of the other things that it has done is I have very good relationships with my nieces and nephews. So just last night, my nephew, Ram's eldest son, over for dinner. He lives in Washington, came over for dinner, right? And we'll see him every, 2 or 3 weeks for dinner. Exchange emails with other nieces and nephews, so.
Oh, that's a lot to work on here. Very interesting. So I just have to ask you, your parents, you mentioned them, Martha and Ben, mom and dad, how in the world they raised the most powerful man in Hollywood, one of the most valuable, influential people in politics and in medicine and wellness. What was the common thread amongst you 3 when it came to striving for achievement? There must be something they did different than the rest of us.
So let me say, first of all, when we left high school, and even when we left college, no one said, oh, those Emanuel brothers, you just watch them, they're going to be whatever. No one said that. We were not, early bloomers. We were late bloomers. It wasn't until our 30s that we, got our direction, figured out what was make us useful for society. On the other hand, all of us, I think, making us useful for society was something my mom drilled into our head she was heavily engaged in the early 60s in civil rights movement, took us to a lot of demonstrations. She heavily engaged in the anti-war, anti-Vietnam War movement well before everyone else in the 64, 65. And so being socially valuable, contributing to society was something very important. And the last thing she did is she was the anti-helicopter mom. She was grounded. We were sent out the door, go play. Okay, so we had to figure it out ourselves. We had to negotiate. We had to figure out, what we were going to do to occupy our time. And this was day after day after day. And that gives you a lot of skills, executive function skills. It gives you skills for negotiating with people. It gives you skills for planning. So we developed all those by, being out on the playground, in parks, wherever.
It may not be football players, but the Mannings and the Emanuels might have the best genes ever. And the parenting clearly goes hand in hand. All right, so we got to get through the rest of these. So number 3 is expand your mind. And I think I've seen that when it comes to my parents, friends' parents, my wife's parents. You say don't retire. Why? And if you do, then what?
So there's a lot of data. It's not uncontroversial. I have a colleague here at Penn who doesn't agree with me that when you retire, mental cognitive decline happens. Your mental functioning goes down. Partially it depends on what you do and how you plan retirement. If you're going to take it easy, that could be actually quite counterproductive because work does several things for you. First of all, it gives you a schedule. So you're actually beholden to other people. You help other people. Second, it provides you with a social network, people you talk to regularly. And a colleague of mine retired from Penn, and he said the hardest thing for him upon retirement is that his social network disappeared. He had to reform a social network. Third, it presents you with all sorts of challenges. How am I going to do this? Problem solving, keeps the brain very young. And the last thing it does is actually has good time. One of the things that happens when you retire is you often end up substituting much more passive activities. Watching television, where you're not very engaged, the brain is not tuned in. And so work, that's one of the reasons work is important. Now, we're all going to retire at some point, but you can plan it out. You can volunteer, right? You can take up new hobbies. You can travel and learn things, or even volunteer on things like Habitat for Humanity. The model for all of this, of course, is Jimmy Carter. So you have to actually retire positively. And one of the things I like to say, and I think is in that chapter, everything we know Ben Franklin for, all the inventions, all the science, all the being the diplomat, being a politician, all of that happened after he retired. He made a lot of money, and for him, retirement wasn't lazing around. Retirement was, all right, I don't have to worry about business. I don't have to worry about money. Let me worry about doing good.
Yeah, Jimmy Carter, got elected president. You could argue his most successful years were post.
Yes, 100%.
All right, number 4, I brought props because it is eat your ice cream. I should have tipped you off and had you brought ice cream. I brought some Jenny's because this stuff is just terrific. Tell me more about what you mean, eat your ice cream. The book is not about ice cream. It may be called Eat Your Cheesecake. That's your favorite dessert. Why is it important to have some ice cream?
Well, first of all, for all the wellness activities, it's important to enjoy them, right? You should not just punish yourself. Wellness is not about self-denial because you're going to have to do these activities and these behaviors for decades. You have to enjoy them. So the first thing about eating is make it enjoyable. The second thing about eating is, dairy is really good for you. And especially good protein, good vitamins. It is one of those great items to eat. And we know it can help you lose weight. And, it's not just ice cream. It's yogurt. It's cottage cheese. It's hard cheeses. Like my favorites are the Swiss Alpine cheeses, Gruyere, and things like that. Really important to enjoy yourself. So I think people often forget. because they think wellness, it's got to be, if I'm not denying myself, if I'm not dieting, it can't be good. That's wrong. That's one of the reasons most people who are on diets, they just fail, because it's all about self-denial. That's not where we need to be. We need to be, wow, this is lovely food, and I'm sharing it with other people. I'm in this great environment, and it should be fun. And ice cream is the epitome of...
If you could have one flavor for the rest of your life?
Probably chocolate hazelnut. I really like that.
Wow.
So.
I'm having lemon blueberry, but I'd say mint chocolate chip.
Yeah. Mint is very refreshing.
Oh, it is. I want to add no soda, very important in here. No added salt, which remarkably Zeke grew up in a house with no added salt. But there are 3 big diet don'ts. Quickly, what are they?
No sodas. So that's 140 calories, 10 teaspoons of sugar for 0 nutritional value. Second, get rid of those packaged snacks, cookies, pretzels. Over the last 3 decades, we've increased the intake, so we're now at about 500 calories a day of packaged snacks. Those muffins and things, no good for you. And the last thing is we do have to reduce our ultra-processed foods. 60% of our diet is ultra-processed foods. The 60% of our calories are ultra-processed foods. They're associated with, shorter life, increased risk of dementia, earlier dementia. Not a good thing. So don't buy the packages. Buy whole foods, natural foods, and it'll be much, much better for you.
Simple rule number 5, move it. There are 3 types of exercise: aerobic, strength training, and balance/flexibility. So if you're just doing one thing, running, swimming, one thing all week, are you doing it wrong? Why is it so important to do all 3?
Yes. So something like running or swimming is actually 2, because they're very aerobic, right? Your heart rate goes up, you're breathing, but they're also stressing your muscles. And so that's a kind of strength training. That's why swimmers look like V's, right? Their lats and all are really built. So those are sort of twofer. You get aerobic and strength training. The problem is if you do only one thing, you build that up over and over and over again. So I, for example, love biking. That's my aerobic exercise of choice. But doesn't do much for your top of your body. So I have to lift weights and do other things to actually increase my upper body strength. And then I do 20 minutes of yoga every morning.
And only one sport hits all 3. It's not tennis, even though the U.S. Open says they're the healthiest sport in the world. What is it and why?
Yes, Norwegian cross-country skiing. It's cross-country skiing because you've got balance, you've got plenty of aerobic activity, and you've got a lot of strength, arms, legs, everything. It is the trifecta of physical activity, which is why, one of the best measures, if you want to measure one thing for longevity, but also for your exercise output, is VO2 max, how well you use oxygen. And if you look at the tippy top of the world, the people over 90, there aren't very many of them. Predominantly the Norwegian skiers, cross-country skiers. Occasional bicyclists will fit in that group, but it's pretty amazing when you look at that list. And it's on Wikipedia or other places.
Remarkable.
Yeah, it is totally remarkable.
One of our prior guests here was Jesse Diggins, the most decorated all-time American cross-country skier. So you'll be happy to hear that. And of course, number 6, sleep like a baby. You have 7 different things that will lead to better sleep. What do we want to do in the bedroom? What's the environment?
You want to get the environment right because sleep is one of those things you cannot will yourself to do. You have to just make the bed. So how do you make the bed? Well, you actually have cool. It should be in the mid-60s. 2, dark. Make sure all those little green, orange, red, whatever the lights are, no. You've got to get those right. Don't look at your cell phone or screen an hour before bed. Don't nap after 2 p.m. Don't drink alcohol after 2 p.m. Don't do caffeine. It takes about 7 or 8 hours to get rid of your caffeine. Don't do those things.
And
Really,
don't have a clock next to you.
yes. Not, I violate that because I got a long, complicated thing. Also, it's not, all the medications that people are trying to show. We like quick fixes in America. Most people like quick fixes, and they go for, I'm not sleeping well. Get me that melatonin or get me that sleeping pill. They don't work. The American Academy of Sleep Medicine says, no, don't do those things. The only thing that seems to work is cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, CBTI. But we don't have enough therapists. So I think the important thing is make a cool room, get it dark, get down in bed. I read a hard book, a regular book. And then when my eyes are sort of glazing and I'm reading the same paragraph twice and I have no idea what it says, then I'm ready for sleep. And that's critical to sort of do that. Don't doom scroll and all of that. Bad.
And finally, how important is it to go to bed and wake up at the same time? You hear a lot about that.
Yes, and good recommendation. Now, not all of us can do that, right? Sometimes I got to get up early, right? I got someone who wants a podcast or someone who wants an interview, on the 6 o'clock hour. Well, you got to get up early, okay? So but to the extent that you can control going to bed consistently, 10:30, 11, whatever your time is. I will say one thing here, which has just come out, actually, a new piece of information. Night owls, people who are naturally go to bed late, midnight 1. I think all journalists are by definition night owls. You don't go into journalism unless you're a night owl. Actually, higher risk of bad health, especially heart disease, higher risk of smoking, higher risk of eating badly. And so those people, night owls, need to actually attend more to doing all the activities that are in the wellness, the exercise, not smoking, eating well. And so that's really, really important.
Excellent advice. Eat your ice cream. 6 simple rules for a long and healthy life. I look forward to having some ice cream with you in person. Dr. Ezekiel Emanual, great pleasure having you, sir. Thank you.
This has been a wonderful interview. Thank you very much, and thank you for having read the book so carefully and being a model interviewer. I really appreciate it.